What's up, everybody? It's your guy Realistic, and I'm doing another tutorial for SoundOracle.net. And today I'm doing top 5 plugin compressors, so software compressors rather than hardware compressors. So there's so many compressors on the market, there's so many to choose from, it can get overwhelming. So I thought I'd narrow it down to my favorite, my top 5 plugin compressors. Hopefully that kind of helps you out. I'm not actually going to go through and talk about what each parameter of a compressor does. I actually have a full tutorial on that, so if you want to know more, just check that out. Just go to the SoundOracle YouTube page, and then you can find the How a Compressor Works tutorial. This one, I'm just going to talk about why I like the compressors, and then talk about the different parameters on the compressor and what makes it special and unique. And also let me know in the comment section below while you're watching this what your top 5 compressors are, what your favorite compressor is. If you feel like there's any compressors that I need to be checking out that maybe I slept on, let me know. And also, if there's any of these compressors that you liked and you want to know more about them and you want me to do a full video on them or full review, just let me know in the comment sections below and I can definitely do that for you. So we're doing top 5 plugin compressors, and this is my top 5. Not your top 5, but my top 5. Let's go. All right, so I got Ableton open up here, and I'm going to do my top 5 software plugin compressors. So before I get into my top 5, I just want to do some honorable mentions real quick here. So number 1 for my honorable mention is the SSL bus compressor. Both Waves and UAD make a version, as you can see right here. I personally like the UAD one. I just like the tone of it. I feel like it's a little bit closer to how it sounds. I used to work on an SSL duality that had the SSL bus compressor right in the middle near the master section, and I feel like the UAD one sounded a little bit closer to it. So I absolutely love this because it's a great way to glue things. It sounds great on your drum sum. It sounds great on vocal sums when you're trying to do a bunch of background vocals, and of course it sounds great on your master channel. It's a great way to glue things together, make everything seem cohesive and solid, like it's all gelled together. It's in my honorable mentions instead of my top 5 because it does lack a little bit as far as the ratios. You can only do 2, 4, or 10, and I wish it had a little bit more flexibility with that. Like I said, Waves makes a version 2, so if you don't have a universal audio interface or a satellite, you can still get use out of it by using the Waves version. All right, next I have the famous LA2A, and then also all of the knockoff versions of it, and there are a lot of knockoff versions of this. You can find these in a lot of stock plugins. For most DAWs will have a knockoff version of this. A lot of other third-party sites will have a knockoff version. And of course, Waves makes the most famous knockoff version being the CLA2A. So I like the LA2A because it has classic tone to it, and anytime I see it in the studio, I'm quick to grab it. I have it in my honorable mentions because, again, it lacks things. We don't have attack, release, or anything like that. We just have our gain input and our peak reduction. The reason why it doesn't have attack and release is because the hardware has an optical light inside of it that chooses how fast the attack and release is going to be based on what the peak reduction is at, the gain, and how much signal is being pumped through it. It will choose it off of that, and that's how all the modeled ones use it as well. All right, my last honorable mention is your DAW stock plugins, and Ableton has some of the best stock plugins there are. This one right here is a glue compressor, just to show you how close it is to something like this, the SSL glue compressor. I'm pretty sure they based it on it. I mean, we can see things are named the same as far as how it goes, and even the ratio is the same. They got all the same settings too. As you can see, the attack has the same settings and parameters. Same with the release. We even have auto in there. The ratio, same thing, 2, 4, 10. But either way, it sounds really great, and there's a couple different plugins to choose in Ableton. Logic, Pro Tools, they all have stock plugins that you can use, and why it's in my honorable mentions is because if you understand the parameters of it, you can make buy and get a good tone out of anything. All right, let's go into this top 5. The first plugin that I have in my top 5 is the Shadow Hills Mastering Compressor. Now, as far as I know, UAD is the only company that makes a version of this, but I absolutely love this one, especially on, you guessed it, the master channel. It also sounds really good on the drum sum as well if you put it in there. And I fell in love with this right away because I used to work in a studio that had a Shadow Hills preamp, and I love the nickel, iron, and steel settings. I thought it sounded great on bass and kick. And basically what these settings are, it just lets you choose the different color to it. Nickel is a little bit more clean and transparent, whereas iron's going to have some more color to it. And then we have steel, which is going to have more of a dirty, raw, aggressive tone. And what I really like about this is it's really 3 compressors in one. We have our optical compressor, we have our discrete compressor, and what the third one is you can use both of these at the same time. So you can use just one, or you can use both at the same time, so it gives you 3. And so the optical is a little bit more forgiving. It has a little bit softer of a knee, so you can push it a little bit more and you don't have to worry about it smashing it. And discrete is going to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit harder of a knee, so you won't be able to push it as much before that compression really starts kicking in. So when I'm mastering, I really like to use both settings because I like to push it a little bit more with our more forgiving compressor, and then I like to just kiss it a little bit here with the more aggressive one. So that one is in my top 5 right there. All right, going on to number 4, I have the API 2500. Both UAD and Waves makes a version of this one. I do lean more towards the UAD one because to me it has a better tone to it. I've done a lot of A-B comparisons with it, and I've also used the hardware one a lot. I actually started using the hardware one before I started using the software one, and I fell in love with this one for a lot of different things. I really like this on piano. I like this on harmony sums for vocals. I like this on drums. That's the thing I use it the most on. Pretty much all of my drum sums use this right here, the API 2500. I like that it has some different options into it. We have different types here as far as how our circuitry goes, so we can have new or old. So just a forward circuitry of how things work in as far as how it hits the VCA meters and then how it hits each one of these parameters and the output, or the old tone, which again, it just switches the circuitry inside of it. And it also has some different options for tones if you want a louder tone, a medium, or a normal tone, and they sound really good. I mean, loud is obviously going to give you more of an aggressive tone to it. Lets you choose your knees on that. And I like too that our threshold isn't notched, that we have some different options here. Everything else is notched though as far as our attack, release, and ratio though. But this one is a great tone to it. Like I said, if you don't have a UAD interface, check out the Waves one. As you see, same parameters, same setup, same concept. We have our tones and our tone type as well. All right, so number 3, if you've seen my tutorials, you would not be surprised here that I have a FabFilter plugin on here. And I really like the Pro C2. They really upgraded when they switched out to Pro C2 from Pro C1 a few years ago. And I really like because we have so many different styles in here. You know, we have a clean compressor, a classic compressor, opto compressor, which is going to be vocal compressor, which is like a really aggressive tone. You can see it has a locked-in ratio. It's already set for us. A mastering compressor, which is going to sound a little bit closer to our classic mastering ones. And then our bus one, which is going to glue things a little bit more like we talked about earlier with the SSL or the Ableton stock one. And then we have some ones that are great for parallel compression like punch and pumping that can just be a really aggressive approach to it. So Pro C2 I feel like has the most options out of all of the plugins as far as what's out on the market. I like that these aren't notched, so you can really hone in on your attack and release. Same with your ratio. You can get like crazy ratios, like just really detailed, like 5.74. A lot of compressors don't have an option like that. It has our wet dry, so you can kind of add a parallel compression to it as well. It really gives you a lot of options for your knee too. And there's some extra options in here too. It's one of the few compressors that allows you to do mid-side compression. I do have a whole tutorial on how to use mid-side compression and what it can do, especially when you're using side compression. You can really make things really wide. So this definitely hits up in my top 3 because I love all the options. It's endless. There's so many possibilities with this one. All right, number 2, and this was a hard one right here. It is another FabFilter one. I almost put this at number 3 and put the Pro C2 at number 2, but I had to put the Pro MB at number 2 because I do find myself using this compressor more than just about any compressor that I use. And the reason why is because a lot of synths and software sounds to it, I find myself just wanting to use multi-band compression instead of full compression. I find myself just wanting to compress just certain little frequencies a little bit instead of compressing the thing as a whole. So I definitely find myself using this a lot. I absolutely love this one for side chaining. I do have a whole video on side chaining and how it works, and this is definitely the compressor that I'm using in the video for it. I find myself using it for so many options. It's great when you're trying to side chain your 808 and to be able to use your kick to push down your 808 to get room for your kick drum. It's also great for just kind of ducking out some frequencies. I chose this one over the Waves multi-band compressor because one of the things I like about it is you don't have to deal with your crossfade, and I like that with this plugin right here is I don't have to worry about crossfade if I don't want it. I can be able to set completely different parts of the frequencies that I want to be able to compress. So I absolutely love it because there's so many options, just like the Pro C2. You can see it's a lot of flexibility, stuff like that. And you can make several bands with this as well. So it's really great. And there's different options as far as if you want to do a bell type or if you want to do shelving type as well. All right, so my number 1 compressor is the Stressor. There's a couple companies that make this one. Slate is a company that makes this one. UAD makes the closest version to the original one there, and Empirical Labs did help them build the software version of it. So that's why I trust this one a little bit more than the Slate one, but I've heard great things about the Slate one. So this one is my number 1 compressor because I am biased. I bet you on anybody else's list, you will not find this as their top 1. You probably won't even find this in their top 5. I'm biased towards it because this is my absolute favorite hardware compressor of all time. So as soon as they made a software plugin version of it, I bought it immediately and I fell in love with it because it was so close and it's everything that I absolutely love with it. I like it because I love to be able to do compression and distortion and have those blended in. That's what Stressor stands for. It's part distortion and part compressor. It has a couple options here for distortion 2 and 3. So basically, if you want to choose between a more tape-like or a more tube-like distortion, has high-pass filters in here too, something to be able to detect as far as the frequency bump coming in there. And just each one of these ratios is a different type of compressor, which I think is really great. So you can get different tones right in there. I mean, you see we got optical, we have a little bit more forgiving. The Nuke one is great for just slamming stuff and getting like a really like industrial raw pumping sound to it. Really great for parallel compression. And I love too that the parameters aren't notched and it just sounds beautiful. Great tone to it. That's the whole reason why it's my number 1 is because of the tone. I know the FabFilter ones and there's some ones by Waves have more options, more parameters to it, and might have more flexibility, but it's the tone that I absolutely fell in love with when I heard the hardware one years ago when I was working in some different studios. And like I said, when the software one came out, I had to get it right away. And to my surprise, they pretty much nailed it. I mean, it is really close to it. So that is my top 5 compressors. Let me know in the comment section below what your favorite compressors are. Let me know if there's any of these compressors that you want me to do a full review on and want to know more about, and I can definitely make that happen.
SoundOracle.net